Welcome to this pre-recorded Sunday service of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Columbus, Georgia. I'm Bill Harlan, your volunteer service leader. With me is Stefan Bloodworth, director of the Columbus Botanical Garden. Stefan will talk to us this morning about biophilia, so welcome, Stefan. We'll hear from him in a few minutes. But first, we start our services traditionally by lighting the chalice, which symbolizes reason, tolerance, and freedom, but also respect, compassion, and love. Sometimes we call our UU fellowship a religious community or a spiritual community, but we don't share a creed. We don't care so much about the nuts and bolts of your theology. Rather, we focus on how we treat one another and how we treat our planet. In fact, the planet is the focus of our talk or our service this morning, and that's why we invited Stefan to talk to us. But first, we have some announcements. And the big announcement is, here we are on YouTube. Our campus is closed to help prevent the spread of coronavirus. And although this service is pre-recorded, we're holding lots of live events via that Zoom application that all the kids are talking about. For more information, you can go to uucolumbusga.org or our Facebook page. It's easy to find us. If you found us on YouTube, click the About button, and that'll give you some links. I said that as UUs, we don't share a creed, but we do share principles, 7 of them, in fact, which we affirm each week. So let's do that right now. First, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Second, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. A free and responsible search for truth and meaning. The right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. The goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. And speaking about the web of all existence of which we are a part, behind me is our trail behind our meditation garden, coming to you through the magic of green screen. Another way we proclaim the vitality of our fellowship is we usually, when we meet in person, share brief and personal joys and concerns. And so we're not live, so we can't do that this morning. So I just want to share a universal concern and a universal joy, which I think everybody in the planet is sharing right now. And first of all, our concern is for all our healthcare workers and first responders and all the people that continue to go to work and make our society function while we're all hunkering down and sheltering in place. We're concerned for your safety and well-being. Please stay safe. Our thoughts are with you. And our joy is for the rest of us being witness to your dedication and your courage. Thank you very much. Another tradition that we usually do every single service is offer a celebration of life toast. It's unique to our fellowship. It was written by our very own Ed Wilson. And please note, it has no doctrinal symbolism. It's simply a warm tradition, and we invite you to share it with us. So you can take this opportunity to pause your video if you like and get a cup of wine or a cup of juice or a coffee cup, something stronger. It's a pandemic. It's YouTube. Who's going to know? And join us in the toast. I'll let you pause your video here, and I'll give you a chance to get your cup. Welcome back. I'll read the celebration of life toast, and you'll have one line at the end. We celebrate life with its beauty and its pain. We lift these cups in tribute to the achievements of human minds and hands, and in sensitivity to the frustrations of misfortune and heartache. Not fixing blame or credit for the outcome of chance, sensing the risk, savoring the joy, sharing it all, knowing of the certainty of death, and remembering the value of each moment. We drink our toast of celebration to this time, to the future, to each other, to the throbbing of the earth and sea and sky with life. We drink this toast in celebration of life. Now it's time for this morning's offering, which will be given and received in the spirit of grateful fellowship, as it always is. And how might we do that online, you ask? That's a good question. And it's going to be easy and relatively painless. All you need to do is sign into PayPal. And if you don't have an account, it's free and it's pretty secure. So I think you're pretty safe in going to PayPal. When you go to PayPal, you will see a little button that says send and request. Punch that. And this little line will say send money. You type, this is our Gmail address, uufcga@gmail.com. Type that in there, hit next, and Bob's your uncle. So thanks very much for your generous contributions. And now it's time for our main event, Biophilia with Stefan Bloodworth. I'm going to share my screen and bring Stefan up. Welcome, Stefan.
Hey, Bill.
I just want to say a couple words about you. Hang on a second. Could you unshare your screen for a minute? Thank you, sir. I just want to let people know who you are and why you're qualified to talk about biophilia. Stefan was raised on a farm in Durham County, North Carolina. I think that's correct, isn't it, Stefan?
That's right.
And your career has included landscape design and 16 years as a curator at the acclaimed Bloomquist Garden at Duke University. Stefan joined the Columbus Botanical Garden in 2018. He calls that a young garden with boundless potential and big dreams. Stefan and his wife, Erica, who's also our yoga teacher, raised two boys, Ethan and Samuel. So now, officially, I will welcome you to the UU Fellowship and turn the reins over to you.
Great. Thank you, Bill. And welcome, everybody. I'm very excited to talk about this topic today. This first slide is purposefully empty, except for one word. I really didn't want to put a lot of pictures in this particular entry slide because I want people to have a chance to kind of think about what that word might mean to them. Biophilia, affection for or love of natural things or nature is a word that we would use today. And you might want to know, kind of like, well, what's the big deal? Well, it just so happens that we're approaching the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, and I want to talk a little bit about, in the short time that I have with you, my own personal views on biophilia, why I believe it's important and why I believe that it is essential to the health of our planet. But the first thing I want to talk about is this guy on your screen right now. This is an eastern newt, Latin name Notothalmus viridescens. He's sitting on a bed of Leucobrium moss. Now, when I started on this journey as an ecologist and a botanist and a naturalist, I knew no names, but what I had been given as a child was a curiosity, and it's something that we're all given, this innate curiosity to know and to understand and to ask questions. And it's something that we all have today. It's maybe something that in relation to the natural world, we don't get to exercise as often as we'd like. Our lives are busy. But from the time I was a teenager, I had the opportunity to engage that curiosity and engage in this idea of biophilia, or love of the natural world. But you have to understand something before you can love it. And that involves time and attention. But before I get into biophilia in more detail, I want to talk about Edward O. Wilson, E.O. Wilson, he's commonly called. E.O. Wilson is a taxonomist. He's a PhD taxonomist who specializes in ants and social insects like bees. But E.O. Wilson, from his very beginnings as a young man growing up in Alabama, was fascinated by the natural world, and it was hard to get him to come inside. And he had an accident when he was a young man fishing. He put a fish hook in his eye and he blinded himself in one eye. But he didn't stop that fishing trip. He had a hook that he had taken out of his eye. He wouldn't stop fishing because he loved to be outside so much. And what happened is he eventually lost the use of one of his eyes. And he said that that gave him a vision that allowed him to focus much more easily on small things. And he went on to become a PhD taxonomist, specializing in ants, as I mentioned. And he said that the fact that he had one eye was a blessing for him because he focused on the tiniest of things and the need to understand them. And you're going to notice a lot of photographs in this particular presentation. And I spend most of my time as a biophiliac photographing. Photography is the media through which I exercise this idea of biophilia, or my love of nature. And if you are interested in using very simple methods to do just that, where my cursor is, that's an app for the iPhone, and it's also for other smartphones. It's called Manual. It's just an app named Manual, and it is invaluable. All the pictures that were taken in this presentation were taken using that Manual Focus app for my iPhone. But to me, biophilia, or love of nature, true appreciation of nature, begins with that childlike curiosity and building your talent for observation. Nature is so full of textures and forms and shapes, like this tiny snail shell, the size of a pebble, buried beneath a bed of polytrichum or haircap moss. You have to spend time to observe your natural surroundings. I didn't lose an eye like E.O. Wilson, but what I do and have done for a long time when observing nature is I will walk with my hands behind my back. And walking with my hands behind my back causes me to move very slowly. And it focuses my view down. And I notice the tiny things. I notice the creatures beneath my feet. And my own journey to biophilia began in this place, the Flat River Gorge in Durham County, North Carolina. And that's where all of these pictures were taken. But One of the things that I find most powerful about observing and being attuned to nature is this idea of patterns and rhythm and things that you're used to seeing, and then the changes that you notice throughout your time in nature. So one of the things I want to mention is this particular little plant here. After I had spent 20 years wandering the woods of my family farm in northern Durham County, I happened to chance across this plant, Galusacea brachycera, or the box huckleberry. And after 20 years of time in those woods, I knew every single plant out there, and this one I had never seen before. It wasn't part of the rhythm or the pattern of my observances of nature. And it struck my curiosity. It was something I hadn't observed before. So that curiosity became fired. I dug into what this plant was. It turned out that it had never been discovered in the county of Durham before, and actually had never been discovered in the state of North Carolina before. And it was a new occurrence for the state and updated all of our taxonomic knowledge of this species on the eastern seaboard. And it had to do with that need, that curiosity, that observation, that walking with your hands behind your back and your eyes down, looking for the little things that led to this really, really great little discovery that otherwise I would have walked right by. Now, mosses are something that you'll see pop up a number of times in this particular presentation, and I have an affinity for mosses because they are one of the little things, and their forms are so incredible. And there happen to be 12,500 species of moss in the world. 12,500. That's a life. That's many, many lifetimes of observing and learning about this particular plant. So that's one thing that we can take solace in with this idea of biophilia. We have a lifetime ahead of us of observing and understanding nature. This is another fascinating example. This is the flotsam and jetsam that you would see on a riverbank after a flood. My cursor here, you'll notice a hickory nut, the husk of the hickory nut, a poplar seed, a beech seed pod, and then this big guy in the middle is a bladdernut pod. And it's just this fascinating little story that the river is telling us of all the species that live along its banks. And it's written right there in front of us. All we have to do is learn how to read it. And I think that's one of the things that is most important to understand about natural observation and building your biophilic capacity is that nature is like a language. It is like a mathematical equation. It is like a type of music. It is something we can learn if we only spend the time. Turkey tail fungus. I took this picture because of the incredible texture, those beautiful concentric rings. The patterns in nature remind me so much of art that half of the time, if I'm taking pictures of things not because of their botanical interest, but because of their intrinsic artistic inspiration. So this turkey tail moss that happens to be a medicinal plant that's used for immune boosters, I just think it's a beautiful and an evocative expression of nature as art. Just like these mosses and these stones, that was once a solid stone. Cracks formed, divots, depressions, moss spores found purchase, their tiny hyphae working their way into the cracks in the stones, water getting into those, following those roots down through those cracks, water freezing, thawing, the rocks cracking, then you have this work of art that is moss and rocks together over time. And biophilia is this idea of understanding these patterns, not only from year to year or throughout a year, but over eons. This is actually an upturned root ball of an eastern red cedar. Here up at the top, that's a rock that was wedged between the roots. The river flooded, it uprooted the cedar, and this incredible eccentric pattern is all the roots that were hidden below ground that we never would have seen. But this pattern of flood and drought allowed us to experience this magic of what these roots were doing, and appreciating nature for its artistic potential is at the root for me of this idea of biophilia. This stone, these natural fissures slowly cracking over time with freezing and thawing, to me, that's a work of art. And this is an interesting one. On a walk in the snow, I came upon a crow that had passed away. The only thing protruding from the snow was his claw. Look at the artistry inherent there. Look at the forms. Look at the intricacy. It is, again, nature, even in death, as art, beauty, even after life. And of course, beauty in young life. This is, as you observe nature quietly, walking with your hands behind your back, looking where you're putting your feet, you don't make much noise, and you have the opportunity to come across this fawn hidden amongst the turtle heads and the spotted touch-me-nots. Just a magical experience. And just that idea that that baby knew I was there, but he was relying upon those little dapples on his coat to confuse me and to have me look right past him, because I would have mistaken them for just light shining through the trees. Observation and curiosity, that is the nature of biophilia. And if you can engage with those parts of you, you will see things you've never seen before. This raccoon print on the riverbank, it's ephemeral. That spider web in between, in the print of that toe. This print was gone 3 hours later when the river came and went. But it showed of the passage of this species, the passage of this animal doing things that he and his ancestors have been doing for hundreds of thousands of years, making that pilgrimage to the river. And these patterns and rhythms, again, and attuning yourself just simply by being in nature is invaluable. And especially in a time like this, when we need solace and anchors, nature's and the observation of nature can provide that for us. This crayfish claw, left behind by a hungry raccoon or a possum nestled in the cracks in the rock, just a tiny little semblance or memory of the activity that went on. This cricket frog hiding again, assuming that I can't see him because of his camouflage. This magenta coral fungus, you would walk right by it if you weren't paying attention. This trout lily, 2 inches tall, you would not see it if you were not attuning yourself to all the little things. This mayfly, heralding spring. And I want to finish with just a tiny little observation based on something from my own backyard here in Columbus, Georgia. My wife and I were enjoying some time on a meditation deck that we built for her, and just lying on our backs looking up at this incredible canopy. On the left, you have the dense cherry laurel. On the right, the spacious giant canopy of the hackberry. These two trees are like people. And once you get to know them, you understand their forms, what they do for nature, what they can do for us. But at its core, it's just taking time and looking around at the world around you and getting to know it, just like you would a person. And with that, I wish you joy in your own observations of the natural world. Bill, I'm going to kick it back over to you.
Thank you, Stefan. That was spectacular. I think I've heard at least a dozen species that I didn't know existed during your talk. And I can't wait to try out your technique of hands behind the back, looking down, walking slowly on that pathway right behind our fellowship. I have a feeling there are hundreds, maybe thousands of creatures that I haven't noticed before. One good way to maybe improve your observation and learn a bit, of course, would be to come to your botanical gardens on Weems Road. But what is the status now during this pandemic?
Well, we're closed. We're once the shelter-in-place order went into effect in Georgia, we've been operating on a skeleton crew. We're not open to the public right now. But we're taking advantage of that by just continuing to build the garden with the aim of, when we're able to reopen, whether that's at the end of May or even just a little bit later, that we will have new gardens that haven't been seen before open to the public. And one of the ones I'm most excited about is a Georgia native perennial collection that we're going to be unveiling this summer. And it's 40 species of wildflowers native to the state of Georgia. And it's going to be a lot of fun to tell their botanical stories to the Columbus community.
Well, we look forward to that. And thank you so much for your presentation. And for those, if there are visitors who have stumbled upon our YouTube channel and you've been watching, this is the kind of thing we do on Sundays. And next Sunday, we're going to have one of the few worldwide Unitarian Universalist ritual services, and that's the flower ceremony, led by our own Connie Usry. So please join us next Sunday morning. For now, I would like to extinguish the chalice here, that it might glow gently as our hearts, and as we leave this place, walking slowly with our hands behind our backs. And our members and friends can join me in our closing words if they so desire. With unity of spirit, we go our ways in universal fellowship until we meet again. Until next week.